How many folks have played around with Claude Code or built something agentically? Some folks have done it. How many folks have either used a third-party tool, maybe Zapier AI or an N8N or something of that nature? Have you guys, I see Adam, couple hands up as well. I definitely, just to kind of set the stage, this is really about learning. I think I did not intend to do a big webinar for 100 people. Jess and I have been using this tool and tech kind of behind the scenes to basically operate day to day. And it was kind of like, oh, this is not a big deal. And then I think I mentioned it to a couple folks and they were like, ooh, tell me more. And then Jess was like, oh, well, we'll just find half an hour or an hour and Greg will just give you a quick demo. And then pretty soon, because Jess is a super operator, she's just like, well, if Greg's going to do the session for 2 people, he may as well do the session for 100 people. And so here we are maxing out my Zoom. Jess, how are we doing so far?
Yeah, good. We can get started.
Awesome. Cool. Well, again, I want to make this interactive. So if you guys have questions throughout, definitely drop them in the chat. This for me is also a learning moment to figure out what's working and what's not working and kind of how to build better products, technologies, and solutions. Let me go ahead and share my screen if I remember how to do that. So I'll walk through this project. I call it the Personal Chief of Staff. I did not invent this concept. I saw someone posting about it online and I was like, let me give this a shot. And I kind of, background in computer science and tech, I decided to start adopting it to myself. I was just so blown away by some of the things I was able to do that Jess and I were co-working at the CIC a couple months back. And I was like, hey, Jess, you should try this. And she was like, okay, this is pretty cool. And so high level, it starts off very simple. It gets very, very complicated and can do all sorts of things. Just some of the things that Jess and I have been playing with, certainly researching and prep for movies, meetings, daily and weekly prep scheduling, prioritization, task management, delegation, and admin tasks. We have it hooked up to our CRM. It's been drafting documents based on templates. It's read my entire blog and all my LinkedIn articles. It's learned my voice. It knows the types of hooks and things I say. I have it hooked up to transcription on my machine as well. So if I'm on a Zoom and I want it transcribed for future, I can do that. I have it hooked up to my note takers as well. So we use Granola AI, Jess and I, so it's connected to that. It can use my browser, it can use WhatsApp, it can use iMessage, and much more. 2 things you'll need. Free is Terminal. If you've never opened the terminal, it's on a Mac, it's Command space, and then you type the word terminal, and then it'll pop up. If you're on Windows, I believe it's called Command. You do start run command. It's pretty straightforward. The second thing is Claude. Claude is made by Anthropic. I don't get referral fees or any money. I've been very happy with it. It's been incredible. I think I started on the $15, $20 plan and immediately I was like, oh my God, I need to upgrade this. And I'm now paying, I think $100, $150 or something like that. But it's incredible, really incredible. The key kind of core principle, as Jess said, it's really about core language, natural language. You don't have to know how to program. You speak in plain language, no coding required. If you do have a little bit of technical background, it can be advantageous, but it's absolutely not necessary. Context is king, and so you will start off with very little context. This personal chief of staff agent will not know anything about you, and you will start to feed it context and customize it. The more it learns about you, the more it learns what programs you like to use, where you keep your files, the name of your kids, your wife's calendar, those sorts of things, the more and more useful it gets. And so I'd say in the first few days, the first few weeks, it's like kind of cool and interesting. And then you start adding additional context and you're like, wow, it's actually really, really useful and saving a ton of time. You control the context. So the context will generally live on your machine, on your computer. I have it checked into Git because I'm technical, but even if you're not technical, it's just saving those in files on your computer. It's very accessible. So you can literally open the folder, take a look at what those files say. You can open them in any text editor. You can copy and paste them. That's actually how I got Jess started. I took the file, I copied it to her computer, and we're going to do exactly what I did with Jess to onboard anyone who wants to onboard. It's just a prompt. If you are still scared of prompts, there are terminal wrappers. These are third-party tools and companies that are popping up and basically taking some of the functionality and putting a different user experience on it. However, I find these actually much scarier because I have no idea what they are doing behind the scenes. With what I'm going to show you, you control everything. And so it's not going to go off the rails because you're really giving it very precise prompts and instructions, and you can see exactly what it's doing. I'd say Claude Cowork is the tool also created by Anthropic. If you are on the higher tier plan, you'll get access to this. This is kind of a safety version of exactly what I'm going to show you. It's a little easier user interface. You don't have to get into the terminal, but it still has Rails. It doesn't quite do everything that we're going to be able to show you. And obviously, there's a ton of other third-party companies and startups building this. This product called Multibot has really taken off in the last 2 weeks. And it's kind of this idea, but it runs on a Mac. It has a whole bunch of other plugins and extensions. I couldn't stand this. I had to uninstall it. I was kind of scared because it had actually used my WhatsApp, started messaging people. I was like, nope, that's not going to fly. But there are other apps out there. Quick 101 on terminal. Basically 5 commands to kind of get you started. And again, you can ask Claude for questions around terminal if you're not sure. CD, change directory. mkdir makes a directory. PWD is what's your path. It tells you working path directory. It says what folder am I in. ls is list the files. I think on Windows the command is dir. And then there's a command to install Claude Code. So we're going to just do this live. So where am I? So PWD tells me what folder I'm in. ls, what are the files in this folder? These are all my applications and music. I'm on a Mac. I'm going to make a directory called chief. So now I'm going to move into the directory, change directory into chief. So all I did is I made a folder. That's it. Nothing big, not hard. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this command and I'm going to paste it into our chat just so everyone has it if they are following along. And I do encourage you guys to follow along. This is the command to install Claude. So let's go ahead and do that.
And Greg, if people want to follow along, do they have to have a subscription to Claude right now?
Yes, this is there's a subscription to Claude. I think Jess will paste the code into the chat. So the first 3 people who claim that, I get like 3 passes for people who get a free week of Claude. So if you use Jess's link, you'll get a free week of Claude. So you have to kind of be quick on this call to take advantage of it. But again, like it's well worth the $20 to learn and experiment if you don't have a subscription. So literally paste the code into your command line. It will say Claude Code installed successfully. If this is your first time, it may do a little more work to ask you a couple questions. It may authorize you and ask for your credit card if you haven't installed it before. Once it's installed, all I do is type Claude. When you type Claude, by the way, can everyone see my screen? I can make it bigger if you guys can't. Is it working okay? Yes? Okay. It'll ask for permissions. Claude is pretty good about making sure it's not doing something you don't want it to do. This is one of the safety features that Anthropic has put in. Some of the other third-party tools don't do as much of this. So I say, I trust this folder, and now I'm in Claude. So the core thing that you need to understand in terms of how Claude works, Claude has a file that it likes to see called claude.md. And claude.md is the master prompt. It's the master instructions that Claude is going to use to operate your chief of staff. All of the kind of brilliance of the chief of staff project is in claude.md. You can read the file. It's not code, so you can literally kind of take a look at it and understand it. And I'll read the beginning of it so you guys have a sense of what's going on here. Personal chief of staff. The format, by the way, in this file is called Markdown. That's why it's called an MD, but you can open it in any text editor as well. So don't be intimidated by the fact that it has an extension that you've never seen before. So it says personal chief of staff, the job. Help, your name, execute on what matters most without burning out. You're an expert executive admin. Prioritize, protect time, reduce cognitive load, make recommendations, anticipate future needs and potential problems. And then it has an About Me section where you can describe about who you are. And so in my claude.md, I said I'm a investor in a venture capital fund called Founders Edge. I tell it what I struggle with or areas that I would like help with. I gave it key people that it should be aware of in my life to prioritize, my spouse, my kids, my partner Jess in the fund. I give it the core principles of organization for an administrative assistant that I want it to follow. Organization, tools, caveats, and again, it's a longer file. I'm gonna open it up here, and I'll also paste this in the chat so you guys. This is the file. I put it up on GitHub. You can literally, if you hit the raw button over here, you can get the raw text. And what I'm actually gonna do is I'm gonna select it all, and I'm gonna go over here into Claude, and I'm gonna say, I'd like to create a CLAUDE.md file based on this template. And I'm literally pasting. So yeah, I copied and pasted, didn't have to do anything. Now, what Claude is going to do, and this is just a simple example of how you can talk to it. It will read the entire thing that I pasted. It'll create the Claude file for me, and it'll ask me questions that it needs to create disambiguation. Now, if you want, you can absolutely open this file first, edit it in a text editor, put in your personal information. I do encourage folks to edit the file so that it has more context rather than doing the back and forth and asking and answered questions. For the purposes of this demo, I wanted to show you just how easy it can be. But kind of if this was my brand new computer, I was doing this and I wanted to live and work with it, I would spend a lot more time kind of editing the file and making sure it has the right starting information. But as a kind of quick example, it is not hard. So it went ahead and it wrote the file claude.md. I'm just going to open a separate terminal. I did that with Command T.
Greg, I think, why don't you show it in the regular folder?
That's what I'm going to do.
Oh, okay, great.
Yep. So it's created a claude.md file right here. And like I said, I can open it with a text editor. I'm going to open it in Xcode because that's just happens to be what I have and what I use. But there's plenty of editors that can open it. Like I said, it's literally just a text file. In that claude.md file, here it is on my computer. Again, it has a bunch of information, all that stuff that I talked about. The project file will basically create a little bit of structure where at the top of the folder, again, I usually call mine personal chief of staff, but you can call it whatever you want. There's the Claude file. Within there, there's a folder that it will create on its own called memory. There'll be a folder called tools and a folder called log. And so the memory is really quick reference for contacts, IDs, and preferences. Context will be context that it remembers about projects and priorities. Conversations is where it'll log its daily logs. Tools is where it'll create tools that it needs, and what it's done or what it's worked on. And so pretty straightforward in terms of the structure. I'm going to jump back here just so you see what that first one actually did. And so it created it, and we're good to go. Now, it doesn't know right now anything about me, and so I can actually tell it to fill it out. So my name is Greg. I run a venture firm called Founders Edge. My wife is called Kathy. My daughters are Emily and Becky. Again, you can give it context by opening and editing the file. I just want you guys to see that I can also edit and update the context of the personal chief of staff literally by giving it instructions that the same way that I would a normal person. And it knows to update the file as I give it more information. So right now it's reading its own context. It's going to update the claude.md. And so you can see that it's gone ahead and done that. So you don't have to do anything complicated. You can literally talk to it like a prompt, and it will get more and more context as you go. You can see it also just created a folder for me. So it did the mkdir command, and it created a conversations, tools, and notes folder, and it's starting to keep track. So here are key people, here are the key relationships. These people are high priority. It doesn't have access to my calendar or email yet. These are to-dos. And so as I continue to use the tool, it'll continue to create notes and structure and context. And so it's kind of bootstrapping itself, it's getting off and rolling. Now, to get started, some of the things I just showed you, it's really straightforward. I want to show you one other example just to show you how it can create a tool. And I have a couple prompts here. So I kind of pre-typed this in so you wouldn't have to watch me type. But I have a folder on my computer with an export of my LinkedIn. I'd like to create a tool that can help me find people by skill. For example, I'm looking for developers and investors. The folder is located here. And I just give it the name of the folder that's on my computer. And so this is a very simple example where I'm not having to do programming. I don't have to understand it. All I did was I went to LinkedIn. I had an export of all my connections. It gave it to me. I dragged it into my documents, which is the path that it's using here. I told it what I wanted. I was like, hey, you figure out what this file folder looks like and how to work it and make me a tool. And it's going off and it's looking at the folder. It's writing a basic tool. And literally in the span of maybe 1 or 2 minutes, I'll be able to ask it for who in my network is a developer. And it'll be able to run its own tool and give me the answer. My tool finished building. And so let's say, help me find a marketer. And so again, now that it's created the tool, it can use the tool itself. And so you have this kind of flywheel effect where you're starting to ask for things. It doesn't know how to do them. It writes a tool to help itself. And then you can get the benefit of the tool. And so again, these are just folks in my, my LinkedIn export network that, again, if I was looking for a CMO, all of a sudden I didn't have to go to LinkedIn and click through a bunch of things. It kind of gave me the resources. Make sense? Scenarios. So I showed you a very simple example of searching LinkedIn. We created that tool. Oops, let me close some of these folders. We created a tool that's able to find people in my LinkedIn network. This is all working on my computer. I have not used external services to do anything other than Claude. The reality, however, is that most of your data lives somewhere else. And so I find a lot of my data lives in MCPs or other services. And the way that agents talk to one another is by a protocol called MCP. MCP stands for Model Context Protocol. And you can just think of it as this is how agents talk to one another. And so if you have a MCP for your calendar, or if you have an MCP for email, or if you have an MCP for something else, you can install that and that'll allow your agent to talk to someone else's agent or API. You can teach your chief of staff to use your browser. And so gives us the agent eyes, so it can kind of go to different websites. It can do various interactions for you. And the third thing is skills. You can download people's pre-made skills or abilities to go do things. And so you don't have to do all the prompt engineering and the skills and tools creation. There's skills libraries, and you can literally tell your chief of staff, hey, I found this skill online. Can you download it and install it? And it'll do that for you. I'm going to show you a simple calendar MCP. There are probably a bazillion different ways to do this. I'm showing you a simple way just for the purpose of this demo. The more you get into agentic stuff, the more you'll see like, oh, there's a ton of different ways to do this. This just happens to be easier from kind of an explaining perspective. I'm in Zapier. Zapier, as I'm sure many of you are familiar with, is a very common tool for automating things. And if you go to mcp.zapier.com, you can create an MCP server. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a simple MCP server for my calendar. Oops. Let's see. I'm going to call it, well, I'm going into Claude Code, and I'm going to add a tool, and the tool is calendar. And again, I'm just going to select all the tools. If you want, you can be very restrictive with your permissions. So if you like, I don't want it ever creating calendars for me. I only want it reading calendars. I only want it to have certain calendars. I only want it to have certain information. You can be very narrow in terms of your permissioning for this. But I'm going to create an MCP server. I've gone ahead and done that. And then to connect it, I want and I'll show you right now. So if I go into here.
Sorry, Greg. The client is Claude, not Claude Code.
It doesn't actually matter. I think Zapier calls it that, but it doesn't. It really doesn't matter. It's the same thing. If I say what's on my calendar, it's actually not going to know, right? Because it's not connected. It may try something because I do think I have my browser hooked up, and so it may try to open up my calendar. But generally, it's not going to be very efficient at finding my calendar. It doesn't know. It's like, I don't have access to your calendar. I don't have a Google MCP. So let's go ahead and fix that. And so over here, I'm going to copy this MCP. There's a button that says Add to Claude. I'm actually not going to do that. I'm going to have my agent do the work. I'm going to say install this MCP for me. And so it's going to go ahead and figure it out. And that's kind of the beauty of kind of this agentic prompt conversation. It has access to your computer. It's going to go take a look at kind of how the project is set up. It sees my current MCP configuration. Then it's going to add the Zapier MCP server. Sometimes when you add an MCP, you do have to restart your Claude session. So we'll see how this goes. Usually it's pretty straightforward. I always joke whenever doing a live demo, there's always something that's going to go wrong, but it's asking for permission to write that file, give it permission to do Zapier into my MCP directory. And then we'll cross our fingers because always live demos. Okay, so it says I need to restart the session.
I've added, I just ask it, how can I get you connected to XYZ? And it goes and researches and proposes something, finds a file to download. I say yes. So right, Greg, you can approach this in different ways.
Yeah, there are lots of right ways to do this. So if I type /MCP, it'll tell me the different MCPs that I have installed. And again, if it didn't work, it didn't work here. So let's try it again. One of the things you can do is if you end a session, you can resume a session. And so I had the past session. I want it to remember we were trying to do this, and I'll tell it it didn't work. Oh, there it is, MCP. Let's see. That one failed. That one doesn't even need to be here. And so I'll say MCP failed. And so this will sometimes happen. And I kind of mentioned that because when installing MCPs, it is doing something a little more. Just don't be frustrated. It'll go figure out what is wrong. And generally, it's actually pretty good at solving the issue. I'm going to keep going for a second while it's doing its patterning and searching. Any questions so far? Rob, did you have a question?
Does terminal remain the UI for Chief?
I do use terminal for the most part. You can build, and people have built, secondary wrappers to connect it to WhatsApp or iMessage or things of that nature. Like one of the things, and again, probably one of the reasons why it's having issues is because I have a lot of MCPs on other projects installed on my computer, which hopefully you won't have the same issue that I did. But like I have it set up on another computer where every morning Claude runs on a server in my background and just kind of gives me my daily breakdown of my schedule. And so you can design or you can ask it for a different interface if you want a different interface. But I am generally in the terminal because it's the fastest for me. The ClaudeBot tool that I showed you, this Moltbot thing, it has a completely different UI, but it does make me nervous because it does a bunch of things without asking for permission. It just goes off and does it. And so it depends on how much control you want. I prefer a little more control. Couple things. One, Adam, you were spot on that I chose the wrong one and I should have chosen the Claude Code rather than the Claude. So that was a good call out. And so I think by choosing the right one, it basically, Zapier, you can see it over here, gives you exactly the right code to paste. And so if you do that, then it'll actually do it correctly. And when I launch Claude again and do MCP again, it will then connect correctly to Zapier. And you can see that Zapier is now connected. And so now if I say what's on my calendar, it will connect using the Zapier MCP. It'll be able to access my calendar and it should be able to give me the breakdown. You can see that it's able to do that now. So it's asking for permission And again, this is one of the safety tools that Claude has to make sure that it's not doing something that it shouldn't do. And again, I think especially as you're using these types of tools, it's important to keep that in mind. I'll let that run. We'll show that in a second. The other thing I want to show is that it's not limited to just your computer or your browser. It can also use your browser. And so, simple example, I'm going to set up a separate agent over here. And again, if you're doing two things at the same time, you can do it pretty easily. You can see Claude in Chrome is enabled. If it's not enabled, you can type /Chrome, and that'll install a little bit of a browser extension. And I can say, I want to buy my wife a present, find something nice on Amazon. And so I can give it a simple instruction via just talking to it. And what it'll do is it'll use the Chrome MCP to identify the potential tabs. It'll ask again for permission if it's a website I haven't visited. And so you can see, like, a hands-off keyboard, it's opening. I'll just open the tab so you can see that it's processing. It's asking what's the occasion. I can say just because I'm feeling nice. Let's do a gift in that direction. And she's definitely likes jewelry. And submit. And so it's going to start navigating my browser, looking, and I can be as specific or general as I want. I can give it these tasks and it can be off to the races, running and doing stuff. And so again, I'm going to move this browser over to the side. This is a special browser, and since you can see it says Claude MCP in the corner. And so I'm just going to let it run. Browser interactions are not particularly fast, because what it's going to do is it's going to take screenshots of the browser. It's going to move the mouse. It's going to type into the box. And so not particularly efficient, but amazing. And it can do pretty powerful things if you have it running in the background, especially certain websites like LinkedIn, for instance. And I showed you a different demo on LinkedIn, but LinkedIn does not have an API to allow you to easily do things. And so if you want it to, say, research people who have requested connection links in things, this is a good tool to do that. So it's looking for a nice present for $50 to $150. You can see that it has commands here in terms of what it's typing, what it's hitting returns, and it's going to go off and do research for me. Key thing for you is, like, your chief of staff can learn and build tools, and MCPs are not the only way. Your chief of staff can also use APIs. My recommendation, if you guys are trying this stuff, is start slow. Start with simple tools, simple things that you're familiar with, simple things that are on your computer, and then kind of start to stretch and figure out, like, hey, let's try an MCP. Let's try something a little more extravagant. The more you learn, the more the tool gets smarter. The way the chief of staff prompt is written is it'll start to remember the tools and create notes for itself to get better and better. And so when I started the project, it was kind of stumbling and figuring things out, and it didn't have my context, it didn't have my email, it didn't have my calendar, it didn't know what town or city I worked, it didn't have a lot of that information. And the more I've been using it, the more it's getting faster and faster. When you're getting connected, there's lots of different MCP providers. If you can absolutely run most MCPs on your own machine. That's obviously the most secure. Running some of the MCPs on your own machine requires more technical competence. It gets a little tricky. As Jess said, if you do want to do that, just ask Claude Code, ask your chief of staff. It'll walk you through step by step. If you want third-party tools, you can absolutely use third-party tools. Again, I showed you Zapier is a good third-party tool. They have good support for lots of tools. N8N is another third-party tool. You can both self-host it or use the cloud version. It has lots of plugins and connections to using N8N, and they have MCP support as well. MCP is one way that these agents can talk. APIs, which was the traditional way that computers talk to other computers, can do that as well. There's an MCP called Context 7, which has documentation on pretty much every single API in existence. And so if you install the Context 7 API, it basically gives your chief of staff even more power to write better tools. And so if you're like, hey, I want to use this particular thing from Next.js or Claude Code, or you can see what's trending, some other API, this has all the documentation. This is kind of an MCP of documentation to make it even easier for your Claude tool to write more tools. Getting more advanced. And so as you drink from the fire hose, there's a lot of stuff that Claude Code can do. Number one is, I would call them slash commands. I'll kind of give you a quick demo of my own chief of staff. So if you, just make sure I'm running the right one. Nope, that's the wrong one. We'll go over here. So in my own chief of staff, I have a bunch of tools and slash commands that I've created. And a slash command is just a quick version of a bunch of prompts and context. So for instance, if I have a meeting, I have a slash command for prep for a meeting. It'll look at my calendar, it'll see who I'm about to meet with. I can give it some additional context. It'll go do exactly what Jess was doing, like research this person on LinkedIn, my past email communications, my past AI note taker conversations, and then it'll give me a brief. It'll be this is what you need to know. I have another one for scanning my inbox for things that are important, for deals in my pipeline to give me a screenshot or a snapshot. I have one for drafting content if I want to write a LinkedIn post or TikTok or something else. And so slash commands are another simple way to kind of encapsulate a bunch of context and make it easier for you to interact with your agent. If you're doing something, and someone else mentioned Claude Code running in the cloud, you can delegate small commands to run in the background in the cloud. I've had a little bit less luck with this, but it is absolutely possible. So if you do ampersand, it'll send it to the background. And so I can say research this person and save a file. And it'll run in the background. It will not take up the context of what you are doing, so you can kind of keep rolling with what you're doing. If you are doing something a little more complicated, so let's say I want to create a personal dashboard of every person I've ever talked to. This is more complicated. If you do Shift+Tab, it'll go into plan mode. You can see down here it says plan mode on. When you do plan mode, Claude Code will think much deeper about exactly what it needs to do. It won't be kind of this like, let me do something very quick. It'll really be a lot more thoughtful in terms of creating a robust plan. And so if you're trying to create a tool that's a little more complicated, just had the SOP of like, hey, I want to nudge people, but I want to nudge them once, and I don't want to be annoying, and I want to do research on them before. Like, if you give it a deep plan, it'll do a deep plan. It'll be much more successful in doing things if you use plan mode. I use a tool called Beeper because I'm on so many different messaging platforms, things like WhatsApp and Discord and Slack. And Beeper is a tool for messaging. It basically brings all of those together. So I won't show too much of my messaging here, but like I'm in a lot of different groups. I can't keep up with all of them. And so most of the messaging providers, the WhatsApps and the Discords and the Slacks, they don't make it easy to have a centralized place. And so Beeper is a third-party tool. They have an MCP. It runs on my machine, so this isn't going all over the place. But it lets me ask questions and context about Slack or Discord, LinkedIn, WhatsApp, things of that nature. Little word on security. This stuff can be dangerous. It has access to your computer. It has access to your email, to your calendar. The nice thing about Claude Code in particular, and the way the Chief of Staff agent is written, is it's going to ask you permission before it does anything. That being said, you need to be aware of what it's doing, right? My feeling is if you build it yourself, it's safer. If you download it, you should check what the thing you're downloading is. It's very easy to get prompt injected, and I am certain that over the next few years, people will be scammed out of a lot of money and resources because they downloaded something and it prompt injected into one of these agents. So again, this is a word of caution. We're in the early chapters of agentic agents, but I do think you need to be mindful if you're starting to play with this stuff. If you download it, you should check or just make sure you understand what you're downloading. This is one of the reasons I deleted Moltbot. I was like, it's doing way too much. I do not trust it. Claude has an extension called dangerously skip permissions, which is very convenient. It stops asking you these yes/no questions. Again, if you know what you're doing, that's fine. You can do it, but word on security and caution, like be careful. It can start doing a lot of things you may not want it to. If you're using random MCPs, if you're just finding random MCPs off the internet, just be aware they are getting your prompts. They're getting some information from you. You just want to be mindful that if you are using, like for instance, Jess and I were using, we use a CRM called Adio. And it was a third party was building that MCP. So we were like, okay, like as soon as Adio, the CRM came out with an official MCP, I was like, Jess, we should switch to the official one because you don't want to be using a third party CRM tool. You just don't know exactly what they're doing. If you are ambiguous with your instructions with these personal chiefs of staffs, you can be surprised. So as you're learning to prompt them, being a little more specific and constrained is helpful as well. This is just the beginning. There's a ton of stuff. There's a ton of community doing this stuff. I'm still learning. I'm a couple of months into using my chief of staff, and every day I'm learning new things. This morning I told it to create a tool, and we'll see if this one works. I'll kind of demo it live. Let's see. Take a screenshot of my Zoom and make a list of all the people in the meeting. So like this morning, I was like, I wonder if it can do this. And it was like, okay, and it figured it out. And so every day I'm kind of finding new use cases for the tool and how I can use it and how I can utilize it. As I'm learning and debugging these things, the tools are getting smarter. Occasionally it'll break its own tool and then I'll say, go fix yourself. And it goes and fixes itself and gets bigger and stronger. And so, again, we'll say, what does it want to do? It says, would you like me to exit plan mode and take a screenshot and analyze it? Sure, yes, go do it. So it's going to do that in the background while we continue to talk. Let's see how my wife's gift is doing. So it came up with some good options here. And so my wife will be very pleased, I'm sure. That's kind of a high level. We'll kind of stop here. For folks, we're investing in pre-seed founders, exceptional founders, often multi-time founders building their next company. We focus on AI with differentiated user experience. We're obviously drinking from the fire hose in terms of anything agentic, and happy to kind of pause here and answer any and all questions.